It's becoming increasingly harder to play retro games. Sometimes you can get lucky and purchase these games again on newer consoles, but not all of them have been preserved well in that way. So what about playing these games on original hardware? Do you even own TVs with these types of inputs anymore? And even if you did, wouldn't you want a little bit better quality than that? How can we get the best possible quality on our modern TVs with the least amount of distortion without breaking the bank? These same principles will work on basically any retro console. The SNES has a native resolution of 256 by 224, whereas the Sega Genesis has a native resolution of 320 by 224 in North America. In PAL regions, it's stretched out a little bit vertically. So that's about 224p. Full HD, which is what most gaming is now, is 1080p. And if you bought a TV within the last 2 years or so, it's probably UHD or 2160p, which is 4K. So we have to take this little tiny television standard and blow it up to a substantial resolution. The cheapest and easiest solution is just getting a cheap HDMI upscaler. This one is the best cheap one that I've ever used and the only one that I could get working with my capture card. Now, I'm only showing you this to crush your expectations. It does a horrible job of upscaling. Everything is a blurry mess. You can get away with this on CRT TVs because CRT TVs are a blurry mess. This upscaler also stretches your image to fit the new widescreen aspect ratio, which is probably the most egregious thing an upscaler could do if you ask me. If you just want to get your games working on modern TVs, then this isn't a bad option. It basically just converts your composite cables to HDMI. But you're not here for easy. You're here to see some dope-ass pixels. And that's where the OSSC comes in. They call this a line doubler, or tripler, or quadrupler, or quintupler. OSSC stands for Open Source Scan Converter. What it does is it literally multiplies the lines of the image. So if you multiply your 224p image by 5, which is the max possible, you'll get 1120p. That's significantly more than 1080p. If you multiply it by 4, you'll get 896p. It's not exactly 1080p because 1080p isn't an exact multiple of 224p or 240p, depending on what signal you're pumping through this thing. So in order to not lose any data, the max signal that this thing is capable of is 1200p. I'm trying to get all of the math out of the way so that you guys could just look at the pretty pixels. Unfortunately, the OSSC does not have composite inputs. It only has component and SCART inputs. This is in order to have the cleanest, most pure image possible. SCART is a European connection that supports a higher resolution than regular composite cables. In this case, it's not shoveling out a higher resolution, it's just shoveling out a cleaner signal. SCART cables are relatively inexpensive, so if you can get your hands on a SCART cable for the OSSC, I'd recommend doing that. However, a company called HD Retrovision now makes component cables for the Genesis, the SNES, and soon to be the Dreamcast. These are a great option too, albeit a little pricier. You could also just plug these directly into a component input on your TV. You just have to rely on the TV's inferior upscaling. Since the signal outputted by this is not a normal resolution, some TVs might not support it. Most computer monitors will, since they're used to weird outputs coming from computers. 4K TVs will also have an easier time with the 1200p signal of the 5 times line quintupling, but your results may vary. This signal completely borked my Elgato HD60. I was able to get the AverMedia Live Gamer Portable to work, but only at 720p. So all the game capture you're seeing is line tripling at 720p. My monitor and my 1080p TV were able to output the 5 times signal just fine. I just wasn't able to capture it. So in order to get this setup running, you're gonna need a SCART or an HD Retrovision component cable. You're gonna need the OSSC itself, and I highly recommend that you purchase the power supply for the OSSC, which is sold separately. We used a generic one at first, and it did not provide enough power to output the video signal correctly. You're also going to need an RCA to 3.5mm audio adapter so that your component cable's audio will work on the OSSC. This might sound like a lot of work for some stupid pixels, but look at how crisp that picture is. Some people prefer the blurry look of a CRT because that's how these games were intended to look, but I think those people are crazy. And if you are one of those crazy people, the OSSC has an option to dim the doubled lines, giving the image that classic scanline effect. I'll stick to the sharp pixels. Sharp pixels almost make it look like you're playing an indie game on a modern console that's intended to look like a retro game. Which is just an ass-backwards way of saying that. It takes your old games and brings them into the modern era. Another benefit of upscalers like the OSSC is that there's no input lag whatsoever. Other upscalers, like the one that we showed previously, have a little bit of input lag, which, when you're playing a video game, is a huge oopsie. 5 times scaling seemed to give us the best looking image. I did notice some weird color patterns happening with the SNES, which is known for having a dirty signal. You can kind of see wobbling colors in the game capture. The Sega Genesis looks way better. But this was easily fixed by changing the gamma on my monitor. A lot of BenQ monitors have some pretty shitty gamma, so I would probably blame it on the monitor, but this didn't happen with the Sega Genesis. I wonder if the HD Retrovision cables for the SNES would fix this.
Later models of the Super Nintendo had their internals revised in order to process off of one chip. These are known as SNES one-chip models. There are 3 versions of it. The easiest way to tell without opening the system is to look for a serial number that starts with UN3. One-chip model Super Nintendos are known to have better picture quality output than launch Super Nintendos, and therefore are probably the best bet to get the best picture quality out of your SNES.
The OSSC doesn't only work with 2D graphics though. It'll work with any console that you can connect a SCART or component cable to. The only other retro console that we have component cables for is the PS2. The PS2 defaults to a 480i signal, which looks pretty terrible. The interlacing gives you this funky wobbling effect, but some games support 480p, which looks great when connecting to the OSSC. Well, as good as a 480p 3D game can look.
480p mode is commonly referred to as progressive scan mode. You can tell if a game supports this because it'll be indicated on the back of the box.
Even better is the image that you get when playing PlayStation 1 games on it. Pixel perfect upscaling just looks more impressive here. The OSSC's strong suit is definitely taking pixelated graphics and making them more sharp and crisp for modern TVs. Don't expect to get more resolution out of your 3D games. It's just gonna take the edges of the pixels and make them a lot sharper. If you have a low resolution photograph and you wanna upscale it with line doubling, it'll look like this. So, not too great. But if you have pixelated graphics, you can either upscale them like this or with line doubling like this. Which one would you rather have? In Photoshop, we call this nearest neighbor scaling. The OSSC is doing the crisp version, obviously. This is why hard pixels work way better for this kind of thing. The only reason that I hesitate to call this the best signal possible out of your retro games is because the Framemeister exists. But the Framemeister is way more expensive and perpetually out of stock. The company that makes it might not even be making it anymore. The Framemeister allows you to use composite inputs and S-video inputs, so it's much easier to connect your retro consoles to, but you would still get a much better image if you used SCART or component cables. The Framemeister also just straight up upscales the image instead of line doubling. I'm not really sure how much of an effect this has on the quality of the image. Line doubling seems to work just fine to me. I don't see how you can get much sharper than that. I feel like as a Framemeister alternative, and as a product that has the potential to dethrone the Framemeister in everything but ease of use, the OSSC might be the better option for most people, especially with the 5 times scaling this relatively new version has. What do you guys think about getting your retro consoles to look this crisp? Is the OSSC something that you would be interested in your retro console setup, or are you just gonna play all your NES games on Switch Online? NES is actually a little bit harder to connect to this thing. You need some sort of mod so that you can use SCART cables. So like Super Nintendo, Genesis, stick to like that stuff. Also, if you're wondering how it's going through 2 monitors, I have like a splitter. It's not, the OSSC only has 1 output. So it's connected to a splitter, that's why I have that going on. Anyway, leave in the comments below, add me on Twitter, any and all this other social media garbage. We got new videos here on the Wulff Den all the time. Our schedule's usually in a pinned tweet over on our Twitter. We got Wulff Den live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. We also got live streams over on twitch.tv/Wulff Den. If you like your ass kicked by me in Smash Brothers, why don't you come hang out over there? If you'd like to support us here on the channel, you can either click that little join button here on YouTube, or you can go over to twitch.tv/Wulff Den and click that subscribe button, which is free if you have Amazon Prime linked with your Twitch Prime. Take either your YouTube or Twitch accounts and link it to your Discord account. You get into our supporter-only Discord. You get videos like this one early. You get into a private chat. You also get priority when we play games with people once a month. We also got Wulff Den apparel where you can get one of these flannels, but not for too long, they're very limited. But of course, the most important thing that you can do and the easiest way you can help support us is just subscribe. That's it. Or share this video with a friend who has some retro consoles and you wanna have them have a setup like this so you can come over and play Mega Man X looking like that. Thank you guys very much. You have yourself a very good week.